we didn't know, like a common narrative has been, we didn't know any of this before, like we couldn't prove it, so why does it matter when the CDC is saying these things as long as they're saying them now? The reason, my argument would be, it matters because people have been taken off of the internet and have their livelihoods taken away for sharing this information before the CDC said it was okay.
Yeah.
So while you can argue they knew, they were theorizing, they were whatever. You can use whatever rhetoric, whatever language you want to classify their position on these things beforehand. They were still right. And you canceled them off the internet.
Yeah.
You have taken them off the internet. You've taken people's jobs away. You've taken their businesses away. You've taken their livelihoods, even their social media presences, all this stuff. You've canceled them. You've denied them. You've put all these qualifiers on the information that we've put up, even though it's aligned with these things that are now CDC protocols. They're now CDC guidelines because we were, and I'm not trying to pat us on the back, but like because we were ahead of the curve, whatever. That's not okay. Like, that's unacceptable. Now the CNN can use this information, MSNBC can use this information, Fox News, anybody who wants to can say these things now that it's approved.
Yeah.
So that's my issue, right? Is that it wasn't socially acceptable to even say these things beforehand. You're going to be removed from the internet if you decide to share this information.
Your social credit score would have gone down.
Yes.
And that's, as kind of a side note, I want to quit. We got to start not using cancel culture. We need to use cancel culture and the culture war and all that stuff.
Because you mean the practice of cancel culture?
No, we have to stop the term
Okay.
needs to change because that's not what it is anymore. It is advantageous or disadvantageous activity in your social credit score. And that's really what it's all about. And when you take a big enough social hit, you get quote unquote canceled. But then there's depending on what kind of cancel it is and all this stuff, you can come back or you cannot come back. But regardless, so put that in the back of your mind. We got to come up with a new term at some point.
And that's when I used it earlier. I told you I hesitate to even use this because it's
a bad term.
It's like charged, and charged is not even a good term anymore. But
it's disingenuous to what the side effects of it really are.
Yes.
Canceling seems. I don't know, but either way, I'm not. I'm glad. Can you imagine this for a second? Let's put it in this term. We both watched the two Joe Rogan podcasts with the two doctors. I'm going to blank on their names again because I'm really bad with them. But
Dr. Peter A. McCullough and Dr. Robert Malone.
Okay, Dr. Robert Malone and Peter A. McCullough.
Yep.
I just rewatched Malone's last night and then got partway through McCullough's again today because I had it on the background here when I was fixing the studio stuff up. So, but for both of those people to have been, because they were both deplatformed, if I remember correctly.
I know Peter McCullough still
Malone
had Twitter,
was.
but Malone was taken off of Twitter. He had an issue with LinkedIn at one point in time. I know they're continually being challenged when they are writing journals and stuff like that. So
now
the videos, like Malone, sorry not to interrupt, but Malone has had videos taken off of YouTube and Rumble. We saw these
and
things.
Rumble.
Yeah. He had a video taken off of Rumble, I believe.
This is why Rumble. That's why I'm not in love with Rumble or locals. But if they did not have the world's most popular talk show available on somewhat of a private service,
right,
aka Joe Rogan Experience, only available on Spotify. If they did not have that, and if Joe Rogan wasn't as powerful as he was to keep him safe on Spotify, both those voices would have never been able to get out. And that, to me, is disturbing.
That's why that matters.
Malone.
That's why it matters.
Who is he is arguably the godfather of the technology behind the vaccine.
He helped invented the mRNA vaccine technology that was used to create the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines for COVID-19.
Now, this is not to say that because you do a thing at one point in your career, you're not a crazy whack job now. Right? But if, as credentialed as you are, not that I believe in credentialism, and that's why I'm a free speech guy, but if you have all these different things, you come from the history that he's come from, you have the background that he's come from, tons of publishing in, peer-reviewed journals, the whole 9 yards. If he comes out and because whatever he has to say runs contrary to the current accepted narrative, it must be silenced, it must be shut down. That is not okay. It's not okay to do that now. It's not okay to do that a year ago and then make it okay now, which I don't know what to do about it, man. I don't know what to do about it. It's a problem because it runs throughout. I mean, it's a problem for us to run an ad. It's a problem for one of the founders of mRNA technology to be able to tell people about it on the fucking internet. The only free place that you could probably get that. Otherwise, you got to be one of the donors at a, $500 million or $500,000 fucking speaking event that, how these guys do that. So it's by being okay with any form. I'm just going to broad brush it like that. Obviously there's exceptions, but any form of censorship on in a public square, which is the internet nowadays, regardless of the platform, whatever you're doing on the internet, if you're out there trying to get on your soapbox and talk, any censorship of that it's an infringement on free speech. And when you open the door up to that, you open the door up to silencing for years at a time until the gatekeepers decide it's okay to release to the world. That's what it's felt like this last month that we've been gone. All the COVID updates and all these things that we're going to be sharing and all this stuff it's nothing new in the grand scheme of things that coming out of our mouths anyways. It's not new coming out of our mouths, but now it's more acceptable to talk about for some reason. And I'm not comfortable with that fact. I'm somewhat thankful that we can talk about some of these things now without fear of repercussion. And, for us, it's not that big a deal, but obviously we can't run ads, so that's a thing. But still, it's nice that there are a few safe havens left, but it's getting bad out there right now, man. Just even with all the hopeful things that we're getting from Omicron now. Good that it's coming. Bad that it ever left. That was not okay then, and it's still not okay now.
So let's take a look at this article real quick, Ryan. Mm-hmm. This is the article from Yahoo. This has to do with nurses being pressured to come back to work while they are still testing positive for COVID.
Oh, and we have sound too. Nice.
There we go, and we have sound.
So this is it. COVID positive nurses say they're being pressured to work while sick, and they're petrified of infecting patients. Yet doesn't seem like a good call.
In a TikTok video now viewed more than 7.2 million times, April Lynn, an ICU nurse, claimed her hospital cleared her to return to work 5 days after testing positive for COVID-19, despite still having a cough and severe fatigue. 4 other nurses told Insider that in the last week or so, they've been instructed to come into work with symptomatic COVID-19 or risk losing pay or receiving a formal warning. The nurses said hospital administrators are pointing to new federal emergency guidance that allows healthcare workers to shorten isolation periods as a way to mitigate widespread staffing shortages. Okay. I just sent you another article through Signal that's from Fox News, right?
Okay.
So, and I'm purposefully using different platforms so no one can be like, oh, you're only using Fox News, you're only using blah, 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 right? The first one is from Yahoo, citing staffing shortages, right?
Okay.
This was from, I believe this article was from 3 days ago. And I think that it will say somewhere at the top, published 3 days ago. Weeks after Minnesota nurses warn of staffing crisis, Mayo Clinic fires 700 unvaccinated workers.
700?
These are in different places, right?
But the Mayo Clinic is like, it's a big deal.
I don't know where.
Minnesota fired 700 vaccinated employees just weeks after the nurses pleaded with hospital CEOs in the state to address a staffing crisis. While Mayo Clinic is saddened to lose valuable employees, we need to take all steps necessary to keep our patients, workforce, visitors, and communities safe, the clinic said in a statement to the Star Tribune.
But the CDC has just updated this from the CDC. Okay, this is YouTube, anybody who's watching, right? According to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's emergency guidance released on December 23rd, healthcare workers can return to work 5 to 7 days after testing positive for COVID-19. Isolation time can be cut shorter than 7 days with a negative test if there are staffing shortages.
So if you really need it, you can go back. If you really need to, you can go back to work in 5 to 7 days. But If you don't really need
with
to,
a negative test, you can come back, even though you may still have symptoms. We now know the government has. And that's I hate to sound like Alex Jones. The government has come out and said, but the government has come out and said now the PCR tests have enormous flaws in them, right? And those are the tests that people are relying on all over the place. We already know that a lot of the take-home tests have a lot of flaws in them, a lot of issues with these things. So this is not a new thing.
No.
So, what do we got there?
Lonesome Lenny. The Omicron and COVID are overwhelming the healthcare system. They will.
The Mayo Clinic just also fired 700 unvaccinated workers.
Yeah. So there's that. Yeah.
We have also heard from our own state. What is it? He's not the state surgeon general. He's like the fucking. God damn it! What's that guy's name? He's always up with Janesley, and I can't remember his name. But even he has said, right? We're fine. We have the resources to handle everything that's going on here. He said that, right? And this is just to his credit. That was slightly before the Omicron variant, right? But since then, we have continued to fire unvaccinated nurses.
Yeah.
So if we are seeing a strain on our system, why are we continuing to fire unvaccinated nurses who may or may not be able to prove that they have natural immunity? And at this point, right, there seems to be indication. I mean, it's not for certain. It's not guaranteed. There seems to be indication that the Omicron variant doesn't really give a shit whether you're vaccinated or have had COVID before anyway. It's willing to reinfect you no matter what.
That's a thing.
So if there isn't a difference, or if it doesn't really matter, right, and those are too general, too qualifying. I'm not trying to belittle it any more than the general speculatory nature of it. That if you are telling me the Omicron variant has a not likelihood, not possibility, there's a potential that it, not even a potential, there's a distinct likelihood that it could break through your vaccination, your manufactured immunity, or your natural immunity. Doesn't really matter, but you still can't work here because you're unvaccinated. But we're going to allow people who are vaccinated, who had the Omicron variant, come here while they're still having symptoms, they're still symptomatic, and they're going to come here, right? So
what's better?
If the staffing shortages are existing, then what are we talking? Why are we manufacturing? And I'm not saying these are all manufactured, so I don't even want to say that because I don't want to bring that into question, that, you're saying that doesn't roll. Why are we worsening by choice our staffing shortages because we refuse to acknowledge anything other than vaccination as the path forward through COVID-19? Right? We have seen, this is a great breaking point for this, we have seen even the idea of pre-hospital treatment be completely shut out.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready.